It's the holiday season. It's the month of December. It is my birthday month. I am so excited. I have some wonderful, entertaining recipes for you this holiday season, as well as some quick cookie recipes. Now, this first one I'm going to share with you is great if you're going to do a cookie exchange, or you want to whip up a cookie and just share it with your neighbors, your friends, and your family. Then this is a wonderful go-to cookie. I have got my holiday apron on, and I cannot wait to get busy. You ready? Let's get started. We're going to be baking up the Heath Toffee Bits cookie recipe. Now, at its core, this is a chocolate chip cookie base, and I'll share with you how to make this cookie bake up just right. So in my medium-sized bowl, I'm putting in some unbleached all-purpose flour. And you see what I'm doing with my flour? You definitely want to aerate your flour. You can shake off the excess to even it out like I like to do. You can also spoon your flour into your measuring cup, and this is important because it keeps you from having too much flour packed down into your measuring cup, and that will throw off your cookie recipe ratios. So that was 2 cups plus that was a 1/4 cup. So that's 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour. Next, I'm going to be putting in some baking soda, and we're putting in 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, if you are new to my channel, I want to welcome you in. And if you're a returner, I want to thank you for coming back. I want to thank all my wonderful subscribers for your likes, your shares, your subscribes, your good vibe comments. I truly appreciate it. And so next I'm putting in some salt. This is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So that's 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I also put in that was 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm whisking my dry ingredients together, and that was the flour, the baking soda, and the salt. So I'll whisk those together really well, making sure that the salt and the baking soda is distributed throughout that flour. Now, I know baking can be really intimidating for a lot of people. So what I like to do when I invite you into my kitchen to share a recipe is I like to share the smaller details, because I have found, especially, learning from my mother and my aunties, that those little details may not seem like a lot, but they actually make a huge difference, especially when you're baking. So next, in my large bowl, I have 1 stick of butter. Now, 1 stick of butter is the equivalent of 1/2 cup of butter, which is also the equivalent of 8 tablespoons of butter. Now, I'm using salted butter, and my butter is very soft. And so I have my very soft butter, and that was 1/2 cup. And so to that, I'm also going to put in some sugar. And so my sugar, this is a 3/4 cup. So this is a 3/4 cup measuring cup that I'm using. So that was 3/4 cup of regular granulated sugar, and then a 3/4 cup of light brown sugar. And so with the butter, the nice soft butter, it's important that your butter is nice and soft because, as you see, I'm not using my stand mixer. I'm just going to whip this up by hand. And the fact that the butter is nice and super soft makes all the difference. And so I'm just going to press that butter and the 2 different sugars, the light brown sugar and the granulated sugar. I'm going to press that into that nice soft butter, just like this with my little spatula here. And with brown sugar, whether it be light brown sugar or dark brown sugar, when you put it in your measuring cup, you want to pack it in there. You want to pack it, make sure it's nice and firm, no air pockets, and that it's nice and it's even on the top, that you even it out well. And so with brown sugar, if you're not familiar with using brown sugar or measuring it out, you want to make sure that you pack it down into your measuring cup very well. Next, I'm going to use 2 large eggs, and my eggs are at room temperature. Now, something with my eggs is that I always like to crack them and put them in a separate container or a bowl or a measuring cup before I add them to my mixes and my batters. Because of this reason, I ended up getting a tiny little piece of eggshell. It is easier to fish out an eggshell if you have it in something separate before adding it to your recipe than trying to fish it out when it's in your recipe and you're looking for that little piece of eggshell that's already kind of start to get incorporated into your batter as soon as you put it in there. I drop my eggs into my batter one at a time, and then I blend well until they start to get incorporated, and then I add the second one. I'm going to whisk this up until it's nice and frothy and everything has been blended well. Now once it's nice and frothy, then I like to add in my vanilla This is pure vanilla extract, and we're going to be using 1 teaspoon of vanilla extracts. Now this recipe is one that I would make often when my kids were smaller, because this is one that if they wanted to, I want to take cookies to my friend or to my teacher, or they would just do different things like that during the month of December. And so this one, I would take the eggs and the butter out that morning before I left for work and take the kids to school, and when I would come back in the evening time, I could go ahead and whip up the cookies, put them in the refrigerator in the evening time, and then I would be able to bake them later on after they've chilled for a couple of hours. As you see, our base was nice and smooth and frothy, and so I'm adding in the dry ingredients. Now when it comes to the cookies and with most of batters and mixes, you want to add dry to wet. And for me, I like to add my dry ingredients to my wet just a little bit at a time. So that way it accomplishes 2 things. It helps me to control, so that way I can kind of blend a little bit and mix. And then the second thing is when you add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, it helps your batter and your doughs not to clump up. And so adding that dry ingredients to the wet ingredients works out better when it comes to mixing your batter and mixing your doughs. And then I like to go around the side of the bowl and then go into the middle, and I press and I fold, being really gentle because we want our cookies to be nice and tender and not tough. So I continue to fold and press until I have a nice cohesive dough. Right before I'm done with my last mixes and presses, I'm going to add in my toffee bits. And we're going to be using these English toffee bits. They come 2 different ways. They come covered in chocolate and they come without covered in chocolate. I'm using the ones that are covered in chocolate. And we're using the whole bag of the toffee bits. Now the secret to these cookies is to use salted butter. I use salted butter, and you see I'm using the English toffee bits covered in chocolate. I'm going to do my last presses and folds with the English toffee bits. Now the salted butter, what I found is that salted butter versus unsalted butter, okay? So with the salted butter for this recipe, it really brings out that toffee taste in the cookie. And so when I have made this cookie before in the past and I used salted butter, and then before I used unsalted butter, the salted butter tasted better, brought out that toffee, really wonderful like toffee taste. You know what I'm talking about. It brought that toffee taste out. And so I always use, though, the same brand of butter. And so if you're going to use salted butter, which I suggest, be familiar with, about how that taste is going to be in your cookie recipe. And so once I have it all nice and folded, the dough is a firm dough, okay? So I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap. I'm going to sit this in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, let it chill up, and then we're going to go ahead and bake our cookies off. Now my dough has been in my refrigerator. It actually chilled for a few hours. It is nice and firm. I'm going to get my cookie scooper, and the size cookie scooper I like to use is a 2 tablespoon cookie scooper. If you don't know the size of your cookie scooper, you can get a measuring spoon, fill it with water, and then take the water that you filled in your measuring spoon, like you're using, say, a 1 tablespoon, and then fill that into your cookie scooper, and then you'll know if you're using a 1 tablespoon versus a 2 tablespoon cookie scooper. We're going to bake our cookies in a preheated oven at 350 degrees. Our cookies are going to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes. And with this size that I'm making, I'm going to end up with about 2.5 dozen cookies. Our cookies are out of the oven. They smell so good. They are looking good. I baked my cookies for 10 minutes, and then what I like to do is I like to let them sit on the warm cookie sheet once I take them out of the oven. I like to let them sit on there for about maybe 2 to 5 minutes. And so I bake my cookies until they are nice and set around the edges, and then also the center is just slightly moist. It's just slightly moist. You don't want it to look wet, but you want it to look just like it's moist, like it's still moist, because as our cookie cools, it is also going to continue to bake in that center part, and it'll continue to firm up. But if we bake our cookie until it's at that point, we've overbaked it. Well, this is what our cookie is looking like. Go ahead and take your bite. Now I'm going to take my bite and see how we did. Oh my gosh, these come out so good. And as you see, I'm missing some cookies already on this cooling rack because my son came in here and he grabbed a few. You've got that chewiness, chocolate, and toffee. This cookie feels so fancy. And these are the ingredients that I use for the cookies: my light brown sugar, my all-purpose unbleached flour, my eggs, the Heath Toffee Bits, my salted butter, baking soda, vanilla, my granulated sugar, and also my salt. Well, that is it for me today. Hope you enjoyed spending time with me in my kitchen. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and your family. And for more holiday cookies and entertaining recipes for the holiday season, I'll put a link to my playlist in the description box below, as well as at the end of this video. But stay tuned, I've got a lot more recipes coming up for this season, so be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until the next time, and remember, it's always good when Dyvonne is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one.